In this video, we're going to be revisiting one of my favourite devices, the Steam Deck OLED, to help you decide whether or not it's worth picking up this portable gaming device in mid-2024. So I've owned my 500GB Steam Deck OLED for almost 6 months now, and I've really enjoyed my time with it. So I'm going to be breaking down the things that I like about this device and the things that I don't like so much, to hopefully help you decide whether or not you want to pick up one of these Steam Deck OLEDs in mid-2024. So I'm going to start off with some background on the Steam Deck. So the Steam Deck was released by Valve in 2022, and then at the end of 2023 it was re-released as the Steam Deck OLED with some minor improvements. Most notably, there was an upgrade to the screen. It now had a 90Hz OLED panel. There was also improvements to the battery life and cooling system of the device. So what is the Steam Deck? You probably already know what the Steam Deck is if you've clicked on this video, but essentially it's a Linux gaming device that you can run PC games on. So the question is, why did I buy a Steam Deck? I already owned an Xbox and a Nintendo Switch, and on paper the Steam Deck can't do anything that those two devices can't already do. And there are 3 reasons why I went for the Steam Deck OLED. The first being performance, the second being portability, and the third being the screen. So if we take my Nintendo Switch OLED for example, which I owned before getting the Steam Deck, this covered 2 of the requirements. It's portable and it has a good screen, but unfortunately the performance of the Nintendo Switch wasn't quite as good as I would have liked. This console is great for playing first-party Nintendo games such as Mario, Zelda, but if you try and run anything more demanding on this device, then the frame rate and the graphics do suffer. An example of a game that runs way better on the Steam Deck than the Nintendo Switch is Monster Hunter Rise. So this is a game that was originally released for the Switch, but on the Switch it runs at 30 frames per second and at a resolution lower than 720p, whereas on the Steam Deck I can get the same game to run at high settings at a solid 60 frames per second, which looks and plays way better. So that's just one of many examples where the Steam Deck outperforms the Nintendo Switch. And it's a similar story for my Xbox and PlayStation. They're both very powerful consoles that can run games at high graphical settings and high frame rates, but unfortunately they're not portable, so that's why I ended up getting the Steam Deck. So that was my reasoning behind picking up a Steam Deck OLED. Obviously other brands do make devices such as the ROG Ally, which is also a great device and in many ways outperforms this Steam Deck, but I was drawn to the OLED display. You can't beat an OLED. So you now know the reason behind why I picked up a Steam Deck OLED. I've now made some bullet points about my experience with the Steam Deck over the last 6 months that we're now going to run through. So hopefully you're enjoying this video so far. If you are, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I've just had a look at my analytics and 99% of my watch time viewers are non-subscribers. So we want to try and flip that number around. We're on the road to 4,000 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing. If you are enjoying, drop us a like, check out my channel. Don't forget to turn on the bell notification if you do subscribe. And yeah, so let's get on with the video. So we're first going to talk about the display on the Steam Deck OLED, because that's one of the features that drew me towards the device. It comes with a 7.5-inch 800p 1000 nits HDR 90Hz display, but essentially the Steam Deck OLED does come with a very good display, and because it is an OLED you do get all the benefits of an OLED display. So you get inky blacks, vibrant colours, very good viewing angles, and a very high pixel refresh rate, so you don't get ghosting like some cheaper IPS displays. And yes, in my experience using this device for the last 6 months, I have been very impressed with the display. In my opinion, the display on a portable device is probably one of the most important factors that makes me want to use the device. And in my opinion, a nice looking display is more important than playing games on higher visual settings and higher frame rates. That's my opinion, but I do think that the OLED display does play a massive part in me wanting to use this device, so it's a thumbs up from me. And this is a HDR display, so in games that do support HDR you are able to play up to 1000 nits peak brightness, so this display is really bright. And if I did have any negatives about this display, it's the fact that it's only 800p. So if you do look closely at the display, you will be able to see pixels. It's not the sharpest display out there, but I do think 800p is a good balance between visual quality and the hardware of the Steam Deck. I think if this device did have a 1080p display, I think the frame rate would suffer on too many games. So I think 800p is a good balance between quality and frame rate. I do quickly want to touch on the subject of screen burn-in, as this does have an OLED display that does get quite bright, so some people are going to be worried about screen burn-in, which is something that does occur on OLED panels. So from the 6 months that I've owned this device, I've not noticed any burn-in. but that's to be expected. Burn-in usually does take a bit longer than 6 months. After reviewing tests that other YouTubers have done on screen burn-in for the Steam Deck OLED, it seems like you have to have a max brightness static image for around about 1,000 plus hours to actually notice any burn-in, which in most use cases is very unlikely to happen. Just enjoy the Steam Deck and you probably will have moved on to the next device before screen burn-in is an issue. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the performance of the Steam Deck. So for the most part, I have been impressed with the performance of the Steam Deck OLED. I think if you're not too ambitious with the sort of games that you want to run on the device, then it should run them pretty well. Some examples of games that I've been running on my Steam Deck with no problems are Monster Hunter Rise. I've been playing Resident Evil 2 Remake, and it also runs the Dark Souls games really well, so Dark Souls 1, 2 and 3 flawlessly at 60 frames per second. I know the Steam Deck can run Elden Ring, but not quite at a solid 60 frames per second. Another example of a game that runs really well on the Steam Deck is Call of Duty Black Ops 3 Zombies, which is a game that I've been enjoying on the Steam Deck. I did also try and run the latest Warzone on the Steam Deck, but unfortunately that's only able to run about 30 frames per second, so it's not the smoothest experience. But that does tend to be the rule. If the game's a couple of years old, then it'll probably run really well on the Steam Deck. Now, in terms of performance numbers, what I have read online is the Steam Deck outputs about 1.6 teraflops worth of performance, which is most comparable to a PlayStation 4, but obviously the PlayStation 4 has much older hardware, so it's not a direct comparison. One issue the Steam Deck had on release was overheating when playing more demanding games, and that is something that they did improve on with the Steam Deck OLED. This device has got a better fan built into it, and I'm glad to report that I've not really noticed any overheating. I can't move on without mentioning the iconic Steam Deck smelly fan, which after 6 months is still there, which is interesting. So we're next going to talk about the battery life of the Steam Deck OLED. So overall, I have been impressed with the battery life from the Steam Deck OLED. Now, you've got to remember that this device is basically a portable gaming PC, so you'd expect it to draw quite a lot of power. Now, in terms of battery capacity, the Steam Deck OLED has a 50 watt-hour battery capacity. Now, the usable battery life from this battery can vary quite a lot depending on screen brightness, what game you're playing, and the TDP if you've decided to lower the TDP for a specific game. So what I have noticed over the last 6 months of using this device is that the worst case scenario for battery life is about an hour and a half. This is if you try and run a AAA game at 90Hz refresh rate with maximum screen brightness. On the other end of the spectrum, I've managed to get 7 to 8 hours of battery life if I've played something that's less demanding and I've lowered the TDP of the processor, as well as playing the game on a lower screen brightness. So it really varies what game you play and how you play that game. So I would probably say for an average gaming session, I'd probably get around about 3 hours of battery life, which isn't amazing, but it's pretty decent if you think about what this device actually is. So I am going to quickly cover the hardware and software of the Steam Deck, starting with the software. So by default, the Steam Deck runs SteamOS, which is essentially Steam full screen mode, but is a skin over Linux. And that's how your Steam Deck will come from the factory. You are able to install Windows on your Steam Deck if you do want to, if there's certain games that you want to play that aren't available on the Steam Deck, but I've not done that. I've just stuck with SteamOS, and for the most part the operating system SteamOS is fairly bug-free and fairly responsive. I haven't really got too many complaints when it comes to SteamOS. I think it's laid out pretty well. It does give you a lot of settings in terms of adjusting the frame rate of the screen and the TDP, which is nice. So I don't really have any issues with SteamOS. The only issues that I've noticed with SteamOS is the fact that if you want to download a game, you have to leave the screen on. As soon as you click the standby button, it'll stop downloading that game, which isn't a massive issue, but it just means that you have to leave the screen on. You're always slightly worrying about screen burn-in, so it would be nice to have the ability to put the device in standby while you download games. So quickly covering the hardware side of things, I think the design of the Steam Deck is very well thought out. I think it's comfortable to hold. It's not a small device, it is larger than a lot of other portable devices, and it's not a particularly light device, so that is worth bearing in mind for longer gaming sessions. It can be more comfortable to dock the device and use a separate controller, or it might be more comfortable to lean your arms on, let's say, a pillow whilst you're gaming. In terms of the overall build quality of the Steam Deck, it does feel solid. It doesn't feel premium, but it does feel solid. It doesn't feel like it's going to break. And over the last 6 months of using this device, I've not had anything go wrong in terms of the hardware. I am a fan of the dual touchpads below the joysticks. They make navigating around SteamOS a lot easier, and it is worth remembering that this device does have a touch screen, so you can use that for navigating around the device. So overall, I do think the Steam Deck OLED is a great device, but to end this video, I am going to summarize some points that I think could be improved with the Steam Deck OLED. The first thing that I've already mentioned is the fact that when you download games from the Steam library, you have to leave the Steam Deck screen on, so this is something that could be fixed with software. Valve just haven't got around to fixing it yet. The next drawback with the Steam Deck OLED is the fact that it doesn't run every single Windows game. Since the release of the Steam Deck in 2022, there are now a lot more compatible games on the Steam library. I would say that about 90% of games on the Steam library will work on the Steam Deck, but it is always the case that on the Steam Deck you can't run as many games as you can on Windows. And my final thing to consider is the fact that the Steam Deck isn't as small as you think it is. So this is a full-size Nintendo Switch for comparison. So before I actually picked up the Steam Deck, I did think that it was smaller than this. And I was a bit shocked when I got it to kind of see how big it actually is. It's closer to the size of a small laptop than it is a PSP, so just be aware of the size of the device. So that was my video revisiting the Steam Deck OLED in mid-2024, 6 months after I picked up the device. Overall, I think it's a great device and I have enjoyed using it, and I would recommend it to anyone that's looking for a handheld gaming PC. So I would like to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you have enjoyed, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 4,000 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing, and I will see everyone in my next video.